Hello everyone, welcome to the second session of the larval odonata taxonomy. We will start with the detailed body structure of the or morphological structure of a dragonfly larva. So here this is a dragonfly larva of the Libellulidae family. So this is obviously we can see the dragonfly larvae are very stout and very strong in structure. So here three pairs of legs are there, and all the three legs are from the three thoracic parts: prothorax, mesothorax and metathorax. And from the thorax you can see two pair of wing pads or wing buds are visible. So these are actually the future wings. So not the future wings, but the future wings are actually inside that wing pad. And this is the abdomen, and for the abdomen 10 segments are there. So in the next photograph I will show that. So this is a leg, okay, and see, legs have actually 5 parts. This is coxa, that is the first segment, trochanter, next segment, femur, tibia and 3 tarsi. Singular is tarsus and these 3 are tarsi, okay, together, and there are claw at the end. So these are all the names are very important because there are characters in the keys that is mentioned that femur is long, or coxa, some part of the body touches the coxa, or the tarsi are long or short, and the tibia is long or short, like that. So you have to know the characters, the names of the different body parts. So this part of the tip of the abdomen is known as anal pyramid. So this triangular shape is known as anal pyramid. So if we see the drawing, the diagram, then the body parts are much more easily visible. So here you see this is anal pyramid, the whole part is anal pyramid, and the central one, the blue one, is known as the epiproct, and single epiproct, and the red ones too on the both side are known as sarsi, singular sarcus, plural sarsi, and the green, these two are known as paraprocts. So epiproct, paraprocts, and red ones are sarsi. So these are very important characters, and these are spines. So these are abdominal spines, as they are present on abdomen. So these are abdominal spines, and these are, as they are lateral, so in position, so they are lateral spines, lateral abdominal spines. This is the wing pad. So here you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 10 segments. Always odonata larva and adult, both, they have 10 abdominal segments, and the 11th abdominal segment actually are modified into the anal appendages, that is the anal pyramid. So always I will suggest, if you are counting the segments, sometime it is important to count the segments, because there are keys like 3 segments having lateral spines, or the number of lateral spines and length of the lateral spines. So you have to know the lateral spines are present in which segment. So then start the counting from the end, 10, 9, 8, 7, so that in the beginning actually 1, 2, 3, 4, these are very like obscure. Sometimes you may misunderstand the counting. So that's why always start from the end. Okay. So this is the head, and this is the lower lip visible, not properly visible here, but these are antenna, these are the eyes. Okay. So let's go to the next photograph. Okay. Here the head is much more prominently visible, These are the eyes and compound eyes, and other than the these compound eyes are very important for the genus level characters, and often we can identify the genus just by seeing the shape of the eye. Okay, so this is labium or the lower lip. So here in this photograph the labium is extended. Okay, so this looks like a spoon, so spoon shaped labium. So all the genera or all the family, they doesn't have the spoon shaped labium. That is why the shape of the labium is very important for the family level identification. This is the antenna. Antenna always have 7 segmented in case of Libellulidae family and Ashnidae family and few other families. But in case of Gomphidae family, they always have 4 segments. So you need to count the antennal segments. So that is also a very important character. So here you can see the labium from the front view. See how how the dentation is very prominent here. So this kind of, but here the dentation is not very prominent. So these characters are also very important, that how the dentations are in the labium, that is also quite prominent character. Okay, so this is a magnified photograph of labium. This is a labium of the family Libellulidae. That's why this is spoon shaped. So the shape is like this. Okay, so like this, it covers the face. It covers the face like this. So spoon shaped. Okay, but in case of Ashnidae and in case of Gomphidae, the labium is flat. It's flat like this. So it always be like this, not like spoon. Fine. So here on the right side, this is a flat labium and this is a spoon shaped labium. So see other characters. This is a very important to know the minute characters of labium, because these are the characters important for species level identification. Okay, see, this is known as, okay, this is a labial pulp, labium, and this part is known as mentum. This part is known as mentum, and this is the prementum. Okay, the front part of the mentum. So this prementum bears setae, which is known as premental setae. Setae means small minute hairs. Okay, so this is known as premental setae, and this part is known as labial pulp. Okay, so this labial pulp bears setae, rows of setae, both sides. These are known as pulpal setae. So this pulpal setae, the counting and length and distribution of this pulpal setae and the premental setae is very important for species level identification. Okay, so here we can see the pulpal premental setae is, at least we can count here 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10. So 10 or more. In case of this labium, we can see there is no premental setae present. So presence of premental setae is also a character, and the number, because if the same genus, different species, they differ in the number of the premental setae. So you have to very carefully count the premental setae and the pulpal setae for species level identification. And one more very important point to be noted here, that is the count of the premental setae and pulpal setae. It may vary with the age of the larva. That is, it is recommendable only to count the premental setae of the final stage larva. That is, the exuvia or the final stage larva only have the optimum number of premental setae. So the keys are made based upon that number of setae. So if you are counting, if you are examining a very immature larva or earlier stage of larva, so you may not see the same number of setae like the adult the final stage is going to have. So be careful with the number of this city. So here another question comes, that how you will understand that if the larva is in the final stage or not. So for that, one very easy character is there, that is the size of the wing bud. So if the wing bud or wing pad is very grown, like it is a very quite big, then you can understand that this larva is going to emerge. So that's why the wing pads are almost grown. So then you can understand, okay, this is either this is the final stage larva or just the second most. So then you can study that larva. So if you are seeing a larva with a very small or moderate size of wing pad, then definitely it is not the final stage larva. So better to release it back, not to kill it. Okay. So some other characters are this movable hook. See here, movable hook is very big, okay, but in case of this species, movable hook is very small. So this end hook is known as movable hook, okay. And this labial pulp, this one is labial pulp for this labium. See, it is very small, here it is very big and grown. Here labial pulp has the end hook, okay, but here there is no hook in this end. Here there is a median cleft, or there is a depression in the like front margin of the prementum, that is known as ligula. This part is known as ligula. So this ligula have a cleft, but here it is not there. So this kind of very minute characters are there. So you need to take care of all these characters. Okay, so this is the abdomen. See here, I have drawn the dorsal spines. So these are dorsal spines. These are dorsal spines of another species. So this is a lateral view. So easily you can understand that how the dorsal spines look like. It is very grown and very big for this species. But all the species, they may not have this much grown and this much big prominent dorsal spine. Some may have small, and some may, like some species, they don't have dorsal spine at all, like this species here. See, there is no dorsal spine. So the presence of the dorsal spine and the size of the dorsal spine and the number of abdominal segment having dorsal spine is very important. Like sometimes some species, they may have dorsal spine from segment 4 to 7, and from a different species of the same genus, they may have dorsal spine on the segment 4 to 8, and some may have up to segment 9. So that makes a species difference. Like you can make out the difference between species just by looking at the dorsal spine, number of dorsal spines. Okay. So and these are the lateral spines, and in some species the lateral spines are very like well grown and prominent, and some species is not. So here it is very prominent. These lateral spines are dagger like and very much pointed, but here it is small. So these this is actually this belongs to the larva of Onychothymis testacea, and this one, the right top one, this one is Hydrobacillus croceus, and this one, this is Pentala flavescens. So if you see the key characters, then you can get that Pentala doesn't have the dorsal spines, and they have lateral spines well grown, and epiproct and paraproct, see, they are similar in size, and Cerci is also quite long, more than half of the epiproct. So these characters can be used as key characters. And one more character, see here, that this anal pyramid, it is almost sunken within the 9th segment. So the 10th segment and the anal pyramid, it is not very long, and it is almost similar to the length of segment 9. But in case of this species, here the segment 10 and the anal pyramid, it is well projected, and it is not well projected beyond the length of the lateral spines of the segment 9. So these are also important characters to look on. So there are some other characters that we can use for identification. So this is the damselfly labium. This is also flat and same characters. So this is maxilla. So maxilla is one of the mouth parts. So these are the additional characters that we can use for species level identification, because sometimes we see same species from single genus, they become very difficult to identify because they have similar characters in the other parts. So then we explore more body parts, that is the mouth parts, the other body parts, for more characters to differentiate between them. So this is maxilla and this is mandible. So this dentition, number of teeth and arrangement of teeth of the mandible can be characters. This is the leg, and see here there are spines, and these spines at the end of the distal end of the tibia, there are spines arranged in a row. So these arranged spines actually function like a comb to groom themselves. So the larvae, they use these spines to clean their face and their antenna sometime. So here in this video, there is a video of this species of this larva. It is grooming itself. So I will show you that. Before that, I will just explain this larval body. So this is a habitus, that full body of a damselfly larva. So these are the caudal gills, and you can differentiate between this larva and this larva. Here the caudal gills are feathery and long and pointed, but here see the caudal gills are round and white and short. So these can be the characters to differentiate between larvae, at least up to genus sometime. Okay. So this is a larva of Syriacreon coromandelianum, that is Coromandel marsh dart, and this one is Agriocnemis pygmea, pygmy dartlet. Okay, let's see the video. See here, it is grooming itself by using the comb. Okay, I will show you again. See, it is using the comb to clean its face. So this is in my aquarium, and see, these are actually zooplanktons. So these zooplanktons are actually for this larva. Okay. Okay. So next. So now I will tell you about the identification of some very common families of dragonflies. So dragonflies, that is the suborder Anisoptera, and I will discuss 4 families, that is very common families, 4 families today, and because they are most common and they are easy to get, and the other families you have to gradually study actually. So the first family, that is Asnidae, that is the darners, and the second family Gomphidae, that is the club tails, Libellulidae, that is very common, the skimmers and hawks, and Macromidae, that is the torrent hawks and other bigger dragonflies. Okay, so the first family, that is Asnidae. So Asnids are darners. Definitely those of you who knows about the adult dragonflies, you know that darners are very big in size, and they are actually in the most common and biggest dragonflies in our locality. So definitely the larva or the exuvia of the darners will be bigger in size. So sometime this is the dragonfly, this is the darner exuvia, and it may the size may be 4 to 5 centimeter. So it's quite big in size. The antenna will be 7 segmented always. The labium will be flat. Okay, so the basic character, first thing you have to look at the labium. Okay, if it is flat, okay, let me show you the other 3 family first, then I will tell you how to differentiate between them. Okay, so just look at the shape of the head. Here I have mentioned 4 genus of the Ashnidae family. These are the most common 4 genus, that is Anax, Anacaena, Gynacantha and Aeshna. So Anax, that is Anax indicus, Anax guttatus, Anax immaculifrons, these are all the blue darner, blue tail, green darner. These species, there we can identify them, like we can separate them from the other 3, all the other 3 genus, just by looking at the head shape. The eyes are either laterally or posterolaterally projected, but all the other genus, they have the eyes anterolaterally projected. This is the, like see, it is the eyes are projecting frontward. Okay, so this is Anacaena. Anacaena is a very small exuvia. The species is not very small, the adult, but surprisingly the larva is smaller than 4 centimeter. So that is a very prominent difference with the Anax. And the Gynacantha is also a very small. This Gynacantha is also a very small species, like small larva, and you can easily identify the Gynacantha and the Anacaena from other darners just by looking at the size. Okay, so and Aeshna is a Himalayan species, it's not very common, so let it be there. And let me show you some other characters, like this is the anal pyramid of Gynacantha. This is also anal pyramid of Gynacantha, but in ventral view. So what is the difference? This is a male, this is a female. See here, this is a female, that's why the ovipositor is visible here. Okay, so here the ovipositor is visible, and here in the male there is another projection here, this triangular projection. This is known as this is actually the precursor of the male inferior appendage. Adult male, that is that will have the inferior appendage. This is actually the precursor of that inferior appendage. Okay, so these are the Ashnid larvae, Ashnid exuvia. So this is Gomphidae. I already told you that Gomphidae will have 4 segments in their antenna. So see, 1, 2, 3, 4. So always look for the shape of the labium, that will be flat, and then the number of antennal segments. So if you see the exuvia or the larva have a flat labium, then it should be somewhere, like it should be close to either to Ashnids or Gomphids. So then you count the number of the segments, antennal segments. If it is 7 segmented, then it is a Ashnid. If it is 4 segmented, then it's a Gomphid. Okay, and Gomphids, I told that Gomphids are burrowers. They are very good burrowers. So that's why they need modification of their legs to burrow in the sand. That's why see here the legs are very short and very stout. Okay, but in other families the legs are generally very long and thin. Okay, so this is one Gomphidae. This one is also one Gomphidae. But what is the difference between them? The length of the 9th segment. See here, the 9th segment is very long in this species. Why so? Because they are burrowers. So they always burrow under the soil or under the sand, but they need to keep their pyramid outside the sand. So that's why those species which burrow deeper, they have a longer abdominal segment. So this is a Macrogomphus species. Macrogomphus probably Wynadicus, because this one is collected from Perrier, not Perrier, in Thartekar. So this 9th segment is a very unique character for Macrogomphus. Okay. and this is the labium of that Macrogomphus. See how the dentations are very sharp and not many in number. And this is the labium of Paragomphus, Paragomphus lineatus, that is the common hooktail. This is the larva of Paragomphus lineatus. See, this is Paragomphus lineatus. So see the difference between these two labium. Here the shape of the labial pulp is different. Here the shape of the labial pulp is different. Easily you can make out. So by looking at the characters in labial pulp, we can identify the genus, and after that, up to species level, then we have to count these rakers, like this teeth. We have to count all the length of the teeth and the arrangement of the teeth, like minute characters we have to take care of. So this is actually the abdominal end of the Paragomphus lineatus. So here the video is there, that is showing it is like inhaling the water and exhaling. So let's see. So here you can see the pulp is opening and closing. So actually it is inhaling the water and exhaling. So that is why all the gomphids generally they have very long slender body and sometimes long abdominal segments, just to keep the abdominal tip out of the sand. Okay. Okay, so let's go to the family Libellulidae. So Libellulidae is a very common family, and I think most of you know about Libellulides. They are found everywhere. So most of the dragonflies are actually most of the dragonflies we see commonly are that they belong to Libellulidae family. So skimmers, gliders, hawks. Okay, so see the legs are thin, long. The head shape is very important, because see here this one is Tholaimes tilarga, that is the coral tailed cloudwing. The shape is diamond shaped, the head is diamond shaped, eyes are very small, but see here the eyes are quite big. Here the eyes are pointed. So just by looking at the eye shape we can identify the species. And for other species, like all the Libellulides, they will definitely have a spoon shaped labium and 7 segmented antenna. Okay, and then you have to count the prementalicity and pulpacity. See here the pulpacity is more in number, like more than 15. It looks like more than 15, and here this also more than 10. But in some species it may be less than 10, 4, 5, sometime only 2, 3, and here sometime 4, 5, 6, different numbers are there. So just by examining the labium we can identify up to genus, and for species level identification actually we have to combine different characters like labial characters, abdominal characters. All the characters should be judged for species level identification. Okay, so here see this is the dorsal spines. So black stream glider, that is the Trithemis festiva, they have dorsal abdominal spines and quite prominent. But in case of wandering glider, that is Pentala flavescens, there is no dorsal spine, and the abdominal end, that is the anal pyramid, the epiproct is almost similar size to the paraproct, rather longer than that, and cerci is more than half of the size. But if you see Tramia bacillaris, Tramia bacillaris is very similar to Pentala flavescens, but only difference you can understand, that is the epiproct is much smaller than the paraprocts. So that is the only difference you can make out in the field. Okay, so I think you are getting what characters we should look for, because today in one lecture it is not possible to teach you all the characters or all the identification of the species, but I am trying to make you understand what characters you need to examine for species level identification. Okay, so the last family of Anisoptera, that is the Macromidae. Macromidae, they are torrent hawk and they have a very unique spider-like legs, very long and spidery legs, and see, they also have spoon-shaped labium. So this is Macromia species. This one is Macromia, probably Macromia murray, and they have very like anteriorly projected small eyes. And this Macromia genus, they have a hood like this. This is a horn-like projection. This is only found in Macromia genus. So if you see this projection on the head, you can definitely say, okay, this is Macromia. And another genus of the same family, that is Epophthalmia, that is also very common species and found throughout the country. And this is the Exuvia, how it looks like. Here also the spidery long legs, and this is the life size like photograph, not life size actually, this is the photograph from field. So you can understand how actually the larva looks like in the field. And see the dentitions, how sharp and dagger like they are. Just by looking at the dentition you can understand that this is Epophthalmia. Okay, so this is Epophthalmia vittata. Okay, so now we will see we will look for some damselfly characters. Okay, so damselflies, that also I have today I will cover only 4 families. That is the Lestidae, that is sprayed wings, Calopterigidae, that is the Vestalis, and Neurobasis chinensis, that is the clear wing, forest glory and stream glory. So clear wing forest glory and black tip forest glory, those species. So these are the Calopterigidae. And Cynagrionidae, that is the most common family of damselflies we see in our locality. That is the blues and dartlets, darts, those. And this is Platycnemidae, that is the earlier Protoneuridae was a different family, but now Protoneuridae is considered to be a part of the Platycnemidae family. So the Platycnemidae consists the bush darts and the yellow bush dart, blue bush dart, and pied bush dart, and the Elatoneura species and Protacineura species, the black wing bamboo tail, all the bamboo tail species are in the Platycnemidae family. Okay, so the first family, that is Lestidae. So Lestids are the sprayed wings. So it is very easy to identify a Lestidae or sprayed wing larva just by looking at the length of the labium. The labium is very long. The base of the labium is it crosses, the base of the labium crosses the legs and the coxa of all the legs. Okay, so it almost reaches the abdominal segments. Look at the second abdominal segment. So it is very long in length. So here also you can see, here this is the base of the labium. So just by looking at the labium, length of the labium, you can understand, okay, this is Lestidae. Another additional character is the feathery gills, the feathery caudal gills, and they are very long in size. See, just by the comparative size of the gills with the body size of the larva, it is quite long. Some other species also have that, but by combining the both two characters, like feathery gills, long feathery gills, and the abdominal, the length of the labium, you can understand that this is a Lestidae. Okay, so next family is Calopterigidae. So Calopterigids are the glories, that is the forest glory and stream glory. So this is the stream glory. This is a very widespread species in our country, and the larva is very unique. It looks like a stick insect actually. in waters it camouflages itself with the broken like sticks and all the other vegetations floating or submerged in the water. So it's a very long species. It is a very long and thin species, and the legs are also very long. So it exactly looks like vegetation or broken stick inside the water. Generally they prefer to stay attached with the submerged vegetation or the roots. Generally the in the flowing water they are found. So it's sometimes if you just simply sample in flowing water, you may not get this larvae, but you have to sample in the vegetations, and not the green vegetations, but the broken and fallen leaves and fallen vegetations. And sometimes you will see that there are roots of the trees that are just beside the water. The roots are submerged and they remain like submerged. So those, generally within those roots, these larvae prefer to hide themselves. Okay, so for Calopterygii, one very unique character is the antenna. So here, okay, here I should tell you that here also the antenna is 7 segmented, but see, the second segment is very long. The second segment of the antenna is longer than the like cumulative length of the other segments. So that is the character for the Calopterygii. See here, this is Neurobasis, that is the stream glory. Here also the same thing. This one is Vestalis, that is the forest glory. Here also the length is quite long, but you can make out the difference just by looking at the labium between this stream glory and forest glory. The labium is very unique. See here, median cleft is very deep, and this is actually median cleft, so it is quite deep. And this labium of the Vestalis, it is not very long, but in case of Neurobasis, the labium is quite long. So that is the difference between these two genus. Okay, caudal gills are also, like, caudal appendages are not feathery. It is quite stick-like and hard in structure. Like, it's not very soft. Okay, so this is the Cynogrinidae family. That is the most common family within the damsel flies, among the damsel flies. And this is a very common family, and often if we are going to collect larvae from any water body or any pond or marshland, then definitely you will get to see some of these larvae. Okay, so these larvae generally, it is very easy to identify these larvae at least up to genus level just by looking at the anal appendages, that is the caudal appendages. See here, this is a Cereagrion larva, Cereagrion coromandelianum. So here the caudal appendages are short and rounded at the end. But in case of Ischnura, the gills are feathery and not short, quite long, but not very pointed. Okay, it is feathery but not very pointed. In case of Pseudagrion, it is not feathery but long and with a broken node in between. So there is a node. See, this is the enlarged photograph of the Pseudagrion caudal appendage. See, this is the node. So no other genus of this common Cynogrinidae family have this node. So if you see a node within the caudal appendages, definitely that is the Pseudagrion. Okay, but then you have to look for other characters to identify the species. Okay, so another genus, that is the Agriopnemis, that is very similar to the Ischnura in the shape of the caudal gills, but see the color is different. So here black bands are there, but in case of Ischnura there is no black band. So like just by looking at the caudal gills you can identify the genus. And other characters are, these are the labial pulps, these are the caudal gills. So if you are going for species level identification, that is if you want to go beyond genus level, then you have to look for the hidden characters. Like here this is Pseudocreon microcephalum left labial pulp, and this one is Pseudocreon decorum. So here you can see the difference between the shape of the labial pulp. Otherwise it is very difficult to identify. So shape of the labial pulp is different, but it's very difficult, and it depends on the experience, how experienced you are for understanding the characters. That is very crucial. And here also see the microcephalum and decorum caudal appendages are quite different in the shape. So it is quite like wide, and the length of the ratio between the length from base to the node is also a very crucial character. So we are actually studying these larvae again and again, just to understand some more characters that we can use for identification. But I think species level identification is still not very easy for all these Pseudocreon species. Okay, so this is the last family today I am going to discuss, that is the Platyc Nematidae, that is bush darts, open wings, bamboo tails, these species. So this is a photograph of the Copera species, that is the bush dart, probably Copera marginipes. And see here the abdominal gills, that is the caudal gills, are very unique in shape. They have extensions, they have like finger-like extensions around the margin. Okay, so this is a very unique character for the Copera species. You can easily identify the genus just by looking at the caudal gills. But other characters are also there, like the labium. So there are four premental and number of pulpal. Those are also important. But general appearance is much more darker. And let me tell you, I told many characters for all the families and all the species and genus, but definitely behavior and ecology is very important for the identification, from which microhabitat you are collecting, and in that microhabitat the species, how the species is hiding itself in that microhabitat, that is also a very crucial character that can help you for identification. Like this Copera always they are found in the leaf litter, and you will see they generally are dark in color, and they depend on the body coloration for their camouflage. So but other in the same habitat you can find some Synagrionid larvae, they generally don't do that. So just by looking at the behavior, at least to some level you can narrow down for identification. So that's why it is very crucial to study all the behavior and ecology, that from which habitat you are collecting, and how the species was there in the living condition. So those notes are very important, and when you are going for a collection or sampling, please take detailed notes of those, like whatever note you can take, collect, because once you are in the field you can collect that data. You can never manipulate that data when you come back from the field. So as much as possible data you can collect from the field, that is going to be helpful for identification. So this is the last photograph I will show you, that is the Pseudocopera ciliata, that is pied bush dart. So here also see, I told you that sometimes the other families also may have a very long and well developed caudal appendage. So this let me tell you one last story for today's session, that is this size of the caudal appendages actually depend on the habitat that the larva is staying. So if the water is well aerated and when the oxygen level is very high, then they don't need very well developed or very big caudal appendages, because having a bigger caudal appendages makes them slow. So it's a kind of handicap for them, but they need that for aeration. So if the oxygen level is less in the water, then generally those species residing in those water are having a very well developed and long caudal appendages. I think that is all, and I hope all the slides and all the species I discussed here will be helpful for you to understand the larval odonata taxonomy, and you can carry on at least some level of identification with them. Thank you for your patience.